Welcome back to Purple Collar Life. It's an early Saturday morning. I've got the Ranger all loaded up. We're going to Jay's house. We're gonna do some milling of some lumber. It's gonna be exciting. He's gonna show me his Alaskan sawmill and a much larger Stihl chainsaw. So when I got to Jay's place, he had already milled a couple boards, which was great that as soon as I got there, he had it all planned that I could start seeing the milling happen right away. We'll actually be doing another video about the setup, getting ready to do the milling. And it is a little bit of a process to get the saw ready, to get the Alaskan sawmill set up. So that will be a future video showing getting that MS661 saw ready to go. So I was learning a lot this entire time. For instance, I had no idea the amount of effort it takes to get your Alaskan sawmill running down the log. So Jay's currently pushing with his right hand to keep the momentum of the saw going through the log to make the board. But what I didn't realize is when you have all that power head weight over on the left hand side, so your left arm is feathering the trigger because you want to make sure you give it enough gas, but you don't want to overrun the engine. So it's a kind of a science mix to pushing the saw at the right pace, running the throttle at the right amount, and balancing the power head of the saw over on the left hand side. So with your left hand you're balancing the weight of the saw head and running the trigger. With your right hand you're pushing down the saw. Now you can see Jay's got a good setup here. He's got a sawhorse on the high end and he lets it go downhill a little bit towards the pallets, and that is intentional so that he's pushing the Alaskan sawmill down the log. It's a little bit easier to push downhill. And I've watched videos of Alaskan sawmills in the past, but seeing it in person is another whole experience. Hopefully this video gives you some idea of the process. So Jay threw some wedges in there to keep the board from binding and to keep it, the new board, elevated off the log just a little bit. And if you don't put some type of support in there, what I saw, and you'll see later in this video, is the whole thing kind of vibrates, so the pressure that the wedges give it just make it a little bit easier to continue cutting down the board. So this cut is right in the meat of the tree, and I had no idea before I went to Jay's place the amount of time it takes to make each board cut. So this board took roughly 7 minutes from start to finish to cut the entire length of this piece of maple. So the wood that Jay is cutting here is right now live edge maple. He's actually going to trim it down, take the edges off of it. Someone had ordered specifically 12-inch wide pieces of maple for a project they're working on. So here's the stack of the live edge lumber that he's got going here so far. You can see it's right in the meat and the biggest section of the tree. And every 2 cuts is how often you have to refill the gas and the oil. So you mix all your own gas?
Yeah, I saw in your video that you buy the premix.
Well, I used to always mix it, and then I was having trouble with my 271, and I heard it was probably the gas, even though I only used ethanol free. So I started buying the premix, and it worked great. but when I was at Fisher and Father, I had talking to Shane, and he's like, stop buying the premix. He said, stop buying ethanol free, just buy even Sheets gas, but use it within a week.
Let me show you what I do.
So you said you refill gas and oil about every 2 cuts.
Yeah. Oh, I went too much on that one. See that?
Yep.
And that happens.
So here we're refilled, ready for 2 more cuts. This is the Stihl MS661. You can see that's a Magnum chainsaw. He has the long bar on it. He can do up to about 24 inches of width cut with that set up on the Alaskan Sawmill. He also has to balance, I think you probably caught there, he uses his left knee to balance the power head until it starts cutting into the wood. What I hadn't thought about is the fact, and Jay explained this to me once I got there, use a special chain because you're cutting, you know, you can see what's coming out of there is more like a very powdery sawdust, not like chips you would see with a regular chain. So this is a less aggressive cut, and you're cutting with the grain of the wood rather than against it like you are when you're cutting firewood. You can see Jay uses his elbow to kind of brace, but it does still kick out a little bit, so you'll see later on in the video here, I start helping out, holding that from kicking out, and I think it's a helpful thing so that you don't have to try to hold the saw, run the trigger, push ahead, and, like Jay does with his elbow, balance the board from kicking out at the end of the cut. You can see the amount of sawdust this makes down the row making these cuts in the maple. So we've talked in the channel a couple times about the fuel for the chainsaws, but Jay showed me what he does is he uses regular pump gas, 87 octane. It is not ethanol free. He just buys what of it that he needs at the time, uses that Sta-Bil 360 Marine that has ethanol treatment in it.
What's that pre-mixed gas cost in that jug or that can?
Stihl is $42 a gallon. The stuff at Rural King is $19 for a little bit less than a gallon. But I don't think it's as good. I'm gonna use it up what I have, but I don't think I'll use it anymore. I'm just gonna go back to mixing it as long as I can use it up fast enough from sheets. So
that's why I buy a $10 bottle and good to go for 80 gallons.
Yep. Then you make sure to use that gasoline and not just let it sit. So gasoline does have a shelf life on it. I've been one of those people that kind of stocks up, hoards gasoline in case I need it in an emergency. But I think the best thing for chainsaws and probably trimmers and blowers, any of that 2-stroke engine equipment, just make sure you have a good 2-stroke oil. So I use the Stihl 2-stroke oil mix, and maybe only mix it up a gallon at a time. Use that Sta-Bil 360, and maybe it's not even necessary for me to buy the ethanol free. Maybe as long as I'm using that gasoline within a week, I'm not worrying about the ethanol sitting in the can. So last year, Jay used the MS261, just like my 261 new saw, and used that for the sawmill. More recently, he upgraded to that MS661 Magnum steel saw, and it makes a huge difference for something like the Alaskan Sawmill. You'll see in the next video, as we set up for the next log, we do use my Stihl MS261 to get the log ready, and Jay's 261 on a smaller version of this Alaskan Sawmill to make that first cut. So tune into the next video and you'll see a smaller saw on an Alaskan Sawmill. Can it be done? Yes. Does it take a little bit longer? Yes. Is it harder on the saw? Probably. So here you can see I started bracing that board as Jay gets to the end, and it keeps it from kicking out.
Yeah, that was good when you held that.
Yeah.
Kept it from kicking out.
One of the really cool things when you live in the woods like we do and like Jay does is that you do have an abundance of trees around you that you can use for projects. Jay used lumber from his own property on the Alaskan sawmill that he made to build a shed that he uses to store equipment.
I don't know if you noticed, it went a little bit faster because
Getting
we're
narrower.
cutting through less wood.
Yeah.
Maybe if we get probably two more out of this.
Yep.
Because I'll get to a certain point, my saw will start hitting.
Mm-hmm.
So it should be okay right there.
Here's a good view of that board. You know, it starts to wiggle a little bit as the saw works its way down the log, so you can see the wedges in there. Just keep it a little bit more stable. Keep it from binding, keep the cut nice and straight. And again, you can see the difference in sawdust between, you know, cutting firewood and then the special chain with the different teeth to do milling. And that saw does get hot. It is a workout for the saw to make the saw, to run the sawmill. So you'll see in the next video how Jay prepares the saw, how often he sharpens the chain, how he sharpens the chain. If you're not already subscribed to Purple Color Life, please click that subscribe button, follow us along in the next video as I show you the setup for milling lumber. So there's two things you're seeing coming off the bar of the chain there. It does look like steam, and there is steam, and there's also sawdust. The steam is because this is green lumber. This is maple that is still green, so there's moisture in it. The chain is hot, so that's the moisture burning off of the chain as the chain cuts through the log. So here you can see it's time to do some cleanup of the saw before we do any more cuts. So Jay's removing the saw from the Alaskan sawmill, and like I said in our next video, we'll show the setup. He's going to sharpen the chain, he's going to clean the saw out. It's very important to take care of your equipment so that your equipment can take care of you. And an Alaskan sawmill definitely requires maintenance of the equipment so that you keep the chain, you keep the saw, and you keep the whole system working properly. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. It was definitely informative for me to watch Jay milling this lumber, and in the next video, you'll see the setup and more milling. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. We'll see you again the next time.
I have it enough. Yep. Where it clamps on both sides.